Guys, did you know the appointed times have nothing to do with us? The 𝗪𝗓𝗓 that we've discussed in previous episodes, it's another form of timekeeping, bookkeeping, units of measurement for time that Yahusha uses ever since creation, ever since the beginning. It says in the beginning. That means in the beginning of time, when it all started to happen, when the cycle of sevens, the Shemitah cycles, the Jubilee years, all these cycles, because time in Yahusha's mind is very cylindrical, not in a straight line, it's cylindrical, you know. So you need to understand that when we come together for feast, it's not about what we do, because we've always thought, oh, Yahusha's feast, yeah, Yahusha's feast, it's about us, it's about what we do, it's a feast. That's a misinterpretation. It's not a feast, it's an appointed time that something's going to happen. So it's about being in the right place at the right time. Time and space. Time being time, and space being the, you know, length, breadth, width, you know, the space that we're in, this sphere that we're in, this area of air that we are breathing around us, this little sphere that we walk around in, that's our space. This body of ours is our space. The time is very critical and important as well. So it's not just what we thought. The word 𝗪𝗓𝗓 speaks of passing through the waters to see the door of Yahusha's blood covenant house, forged in a fire of blood and water. This special marriage home, which is an interdimensional realm of which Yahusha is the door, was created for the loving relationship and protection of Yahusha's treasured first fruit bride on this earth, the garden in Eden. The word 𝗪𝗓𝗓 is also tied up a lot with the 𝗪𝗓𝗃, which is Yahusha's secret symbols. Remember, whenever you see the 𝗪𝗓𝗃 in the Hebrew text, it means Yahusha's right there. And that's why this is a Yahusha version that we're doing. Yahusha is the author and creator, and he's done everything, orchestrated everything throughout the scriptures and in our lives today. So we are making this all about Yahusha. Just as Yisrael passed through the waters on their way to the promised land and were taught how to approach their creator through the tabernacle, Yahusha's bridal people passed through the waters and appointed times as they prepare for the wedding feast and the restored covenant marriage home. That's what we're doing this all for, guys, to be a part of the restored covenant marriage home, something that began in the Garden of Eden and hasn't happened since. The tree of life has not been discovered on the earth. They can't find it. It's gone. And we know that the tree of life was Yahusha, is Yahusha himself. And those who partake of him, well, you've got to overcome first. You've got to overcome your flesh. Remember, I talked about that a few episodes ago. The more flesh you overcome, the more partaking you receive of Yahusha. And the better chance you have of getting into the wedding feast and the restored covenant marriage home. So we're living in prophetic history, guys. We're seeing everything that they've gone through in the wilderness, the triumphs, the victories, and also their mammoth failure in grasping this and being a spotless, obedient bride, coming under the authority and teaching of her bridegroom, and she just played the whore. We haven't fully come to that yet. That's a few videos away when we get to the golden calf. But while all this amazing stuff is happening up the mountain with Musha, his people are down there playing the whore. So the whole concept of appointed times, though, was fascinating to me, because it's not a feast. It's not an occasion. It's not a party. It's not how we think it is. Oh, we've got to come together with people and do something. Like we're focusing on the event, rather than seeing that an appointed time is a time that something happens. Time and space. So for Yisrael, they had to be there at the right time and at the right place, and have the right behavior and have prepared the right way. And we're going to go much more into the preparations for the dwelling place probably next episode. And if everything wasn't done to the jot and tittle perfectly, Yahusha wouldn't show up, and they would not have the warmth, the glow, the Shekinah, the esteem, and the amazing, overwhelming joy having him amongst them in their camp. So let's go on, guys. We've just had all these instructions. Now Musha's been given this. Each year you must celebrate 3 festivals for me. For me. You must celebrate these 3 festivals for me. Not for yourself, for me. First one is the festival of unleavened bread. And for 7 days the bread you eat must be made without yeast, just as I commanded you. Celebrate this festival annually at the appointed time in early spring. At the appointed time. The time I say to do it, you do it. You rest on the 7th day Shabbat, not any day you want, the day I say to do it, on the appointed time in early spring, in the month of Abib. For that is the anniversary of your departure from Egypt. The Passover will always be the anniversary of their departure from Egypt. And no one should appear before me without an offering. So can you see that a lot of the Yahudim, the Jewish people today, they still celebrate this Passover. It's a big deal, Passover. It's the anniversary of when they came out of slavery from Egypt. That's about it. And to flower it all up and make it mean something more, they've added all these fancy traditions onto that simple instruction. Rather than looking back with the Ruach of Yahusha and seeing that Yahusha's fulfilled this. He was the Lamb. He delivered us. So the second is the festival of the harvest, Shabuoth, when you bring me the first fruit crops of your harvest. So all these festivals are about agriculture. He's using what they're into because they're farming people, sheep, goats, so, and cattle as well. So he's using these day-to-day principles and what they're doing in and out, day in, day out, as illustrations, as shadows, to teach them of the big picture, teach them of himself, because everything points to him. So are we supposed to dress up like shepherds and go and find some sheep and do all this nonsense that people do? No. Because the essence of this, we still come together, but the essence of it is different now because we live in a completely different age in the 21st century. It's not about agriculture to us, not about what we eat or drink to us. It's about the blood covenant and what that means for us in our behaviour. The only way we can associate with the scripture that was written 4,000 or 5,000 years ago is a common behaviour. It can't be about food, it can't be about drink, it can't be about the sandals we wear, the headdress, the beards, dress wear, 𝗪𝗓𝗧𝗖𝗛. It can't be about anything cultural. Otherwise we are just a laughing stock and a mockery. We are literally making a mockery of Yahusha's covenant and what he sacrificed for us. We're making a mockery of it if we read it on the surface. The only way we can have anything to do with this and associate is if it's about behaviour. That's all I can see. The only way we can do these scriptures in obedience is to behave them. Because to do anything else about it would be ridiculous. To do all this stuff that they're doing would be ridiculous. But we can have the same behaviour that they have. So guys, can you see that the 3 times we're called to come together and the 7 appointed times of Yahusha involved in those 3 harvest feasts? Something amazing is going to happen. They're called redemptive feasts. Yahusha is redeeming us year after year by doing these the best we can. And it's not about whether we ate lamb or not, or whether we got the right grape juice, or whether we bought matzah, whether we built a sukkah, whether we blew a ram's horn. We've discussed that in other videos, but it's about our behaviour in general in our whole life. Obviously, we're meant to overcome in our life all day, every day. But at those appointed times, you can be damn sure something's going to happen. Why? Because they're an appointed time. And Yahusha just doesn't have an appointed time for no reason. He didn't just set apart a 7th day for no reason. He set it apart so that something pretty amazing could happen. Rest. Of all the pressure and all the work that we have to do all day, every day, all week, on the 7th day, it's almost like an appointed time as well. It's a time that I've appointed. I've set it apart. I've made it special. And if you are in the right place, your home, at the right time, 7th day, you'll feel it. You'll feel amazing, and the anointing will be extra stronger on that day. Just like these appointed times in 𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗑𝗪. It's about what he's doing in his bride, because his bride is scattered all across the earth, but he knows who they are, and he's working one-on-one with us. And we're all called to do different part. The body has all different members that do all different things. All none of us are greater than another, the scripture says. So none of us can be another. We're all coming under the head, which is Yahusha. The feasts are not something we do. The feasts are an appointed time. So we should be coming together aware that something is going to happen. It might be very well the time that he comes back, but even just a visitation, a conversation, a communication, a movement of Yahusha. Every time it was an appointed time in scripture, something happened. Yahusha did something. And it's no different today. So it's not about what you're wearing or what you're eating, it's about your mindset. It's about preparing your behavior and coming together to a feast where two or more are gathered. How often do we get together with other believers? So if we come around other believers, like-minded, immersed believers, not just wacky freakos that are just going to make your life miserable and wreck the feast, how often do we get to come together with these people? So are we behaving likewise? Are we waiting for Yahusha to do something? Coming together in sincerity and in truth, because that's how Yahusha does things, when we are sincere and truthful. If we're just lifting ourselves up with the leaven, pretending we are something that we're not, talking down to the people and being horrible behavior, how can Yahusha move in that? We're being a burden on people. So, and I know that, I've done that plenty of times in my life. And you feel like death afterwards. Why be that? You know, this is a 𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗑𝗪. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's been going since the beginning of creation, and you can't stop it. You rocking up in shoes instead of thongs, or sandals instead of this, or 𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗖𝗛 or 𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗑𝗪, or blowing the shofar, all this stuff, rubbish that we go on about. It's nothing to do with the appointed time that is preparing us for the next one, the next one, and the next one. Preparing the bride for the wedding feast. That's what the appointed times are for. They're wedding rehearsals, dress rehearsals for our behaviour, to work on our behaviour. When you look back 5, 10, 15, however long it is since you've been part of Yisrael, immersed into Yisrael, look at how you first celebrated a feast. Look at your understanding, the naive, childish understanding you had when you began. And look where Yahusha's brought you year after year after year. That's the whole point. That's why I don't mind if people don't understand the things I'm saying, or even the gems that Yahusha's giving, the behaviour revolution, like he did a few months ago with the feast and Satan coming in through the shadows. If you don't understand it, it's poo-pooed right now, that's okay, because each year people are grasping it and growing. So next year they might watch those videos and go, oh well, yep, I'm ready to hear that. That's amazing. So the truth is the truth, whether we receive it or not. So live in the truth, live in the light. That's what it's all about. Returning to the marriage home. Are you consciously, day after day, preparing yourself for the marriage home? Yes or no? Brothers and sisters, Satan is trying to come into your feast, into your gathering, into your worship at this time. And all our feasts Satan's trying to come into. And it's wickedness. So please pay attention. This is for your freedom, to go on to the greener pastures. Do you want to follow with Yahusha? Do you want to go with him? Or do you want to be stuck doing all the religious shadows? Wickedness is an idol. Wickedness is an idol that will strictly bring everything to nothingness and grief. Wickedness is an idol that will strictly bring everything to nothingness and grief. Wickedness is perverse idolatry that breaks the spirit of man, making him redundant as far as truth is concerned. Redundant, useless, nothing. Rendering him without liberty. Where's your freedom gone? Where's your liberty gone? Where are you in there? trapped in there, bound up, chained up, a slave. You've got no freedom, no liberty, because Satan's in there, in the situation, in you, doing things all the time, stealing your joy, stealing your worship. The reason why Satan can enter, and be involved with our feasts, is because of the way we worship at those times. The reason Satan can come into our feasts is because of the way we worship at those times. We bring him in to dominate and run our feasts by the traditions we have added to each feast. We bring him in to dominate. Instead of the meaning, fullness of the feast coming forth and the truth of it coming forth, we bring Satan into our feasts to dominate and run our feasts by the traditions we have added to each feast. We are staying in the shadows of traditions which blocks the light of understanding and true rejoicing at our feast. We're staying in the shadows of traditions which block the light. Who's the light? Block the light of understanding and true rejoicing at our feasts, because we place more significance on what I'm doing at this feast, what I have to do. We are called to do this at this time of year. At this feast, we have to do it. We are placing more significance on what we do at the feasts with our silly traditions than the actual meanings of the spiritual shadows Yahusha left us. Are you getting that now? We place more significance on what we do at the feasts with our silly traditions than the actual meanings of the spiritual shadows Yahusha left us. So what is the wicked evil that we do at the feasts to please Satan rather than Yahusha? Making our efforts nothingness in its idolatry. That's the question. What is it we're specifically doing at the feasts? What is this wickedness that we do at the feast to please Satan rather than Yahusha? Making our efforts nothingness in its idolatry. So what are the things? Well, here we go. Let's start at the beginning. Passover. The silly rituals of foot washing. The bread and the wine, the lamb with herbs, waving palm branches, etc., etc. These block the true meaning, which is to come together in sincerity and truth. This is all scriptural, guys. You can look all this up. It's true. And with Yahusha's Ruach inside you, in this 21st century context, understand that we're making a mockery of these feasts by bringing Satan in. You know, it's very childish, the behaviour going on at these feasts. And we're not children anymore. It's time to grow up and move forward, move on to greener pastures and enter into the true fulfillment. So Passover, the silly rituals of foot washing. They were foot washing because their feet were dirty. We don't need to foot wash today. What is this, Sunday school? What is this, craft hour in the corner? What's going on? It's childish. You don't have to foot wash. The bread and the wine. He held up the bread and the wine because that's what they were eating at the time. Remember the video I did about the KFC and the Red Bull? It's all symbolism. It doesn't matter what you eat. It's all symbolic. He's fulfilled all this. He breathed life into it, guys. And we're sitting there with our bread and our wine and we look absolutely ridiculous. Cooking lamb with herbs. Waving palm branches. These block the true meaning, which is to come together in sincerity and truth. It's a lot harder and more, a lot more required of us to be that transparent and honest in our behaviour and come together in sincerity and truth and love one another. But if I don't do those things, what do? Nothing. You don't need to do anything. You come together with no plan, and you just see what Yahusha's going to do. See where the conversation goes. See what's going to happen. You don't need to be in control of it. So that was Passover. Pentecost. Oh, there's blowing trumpets, there's wearing 𝗪𝗓𝗧𝗖𝗛, lighting candles, focusing on food, party, atmosphere, etc., etc. These are other traditions. These and other traditions are of men's wickedness, taking the meaning off the true celebration of the wedding vows. Men's traditions taking the meaning off the true celebration of the wedding vows and the celebration. I mean, Pentecost is when Pentecost is when the 10 come up with the 10 words on the mountain. The wedding vows on Mount Sinai. We know that. That's the celebration, the cutting of the covenant, renewing of the covenant on our hearts, circumcision of our hearts. It's a celebration of our immersion, of the wedding feast that's coming. It's a celebration, guys. But we're focused on all these external things, blowing shofars and wearing tzitz and lighting candles and focusing on the food and the party and the atmosphere. We're worshipping the party instead of worshipping Yahusha. These and other traditions are of men's wickedness, taking the meaning off the true celebration of the wedding vows and celebration. Satan is there in his confusing religious way, and we're looking for more meaning in the idolatry of our worship, which leads to nothingness. It all leads to nothingness, guys. No, brothers and sisters, we miss the true worship. We miss the true worship because we listen to Satan's traditional rules and rituals and make them the center of the feast rather than the works of Yahusha. We miss it because we listen to Satan's traditional rituals and make them the center of the feasts rather than the works of Yahusha. We're centering on ourselves. In fact, we're centering on Satan because we're doing all these things, traditional things that we've been taught to do, and we've got to remember each year, what were we supposed to do there? And we don't want to let Yahusha down. We have to celebrate the right way. And the right way is to do nothing and come together and be honest and genuine and in the love. Where was I up to? Tabernacles. 1, trumpets, no blowing of shofars. Just get together with no rituals, love each other, realizing this is a sign of Yahusha's coming. Have a feast and celebrate the soon coming King. Center on Yahusha and not man-made things which take our minds to nothingness. Man-made things take our minds to nothingness. If you just want to roll back over and go to sleep and go back into your whatever you were doing before, I have to do that because the scripture here says this, you're taking it out of context anyway. But as long as you feel good and I've done the right thing here. If you want to go back to sleep, switch the video off. I don't mind because we feel amazing and we'd love for you to come into this understanding and join us. It's not for us, There's no monthly charge, there's no subscription. We don't want any of your money. Love us, hate us, it's fine. But we just want more of this Yahusha on tap. We just want more of this stuff, that amazing, liberating stuff he's giving us. So that was trumpets. Don't have to do any of that jazz. Then we had atonement. No more fasting, which centers on ourselves. Do you realize that? Fasting centers on yourself. Rather, restrict your behavior from worldliness. Restrict your behavior from worldliness. Clean out the hidden things under your tent. Did you read that article a few days ago? Those sneaky things that are hidden in the folds of our tent that we don't want anybody to know about. The folds of the tent, little secret desires and things that we have and don't want anybody to know about. We're not willing to give them up. So no more fasting, which centers on ourselves. Rather, restrict your behavior from worldliness. Clean out the things that are under your tent that Yahusha no longer wants us to behave. Center on what is pleasing to Yahusha. Center on what is pleasing to Yahusha rather than wicked rituals from Satan. Haven't you had enough of the same day in, day out, feast in, feast out, year in, year out rituals over and over and over again? Haven't you had enough of church? Haven't you had enough of it? The repetitiveness of it? Yahusha is not repetitive. He says come together for the feast if there's anyone around that's interested. That's about it. He doesn't say what to do at the feasts. He told them many things back in the early days to get their attention. He doesn't have to use those things back then to get our attention. He uses the things in our day to get our attention. And then we came to booths. Our time is wasted again by building childish, wicked monuments and structures. How many of you have gone out there and hammered your nails and built a little sukkah, a booth? You are the booth. Why would you build another booth when you are the booth? Why would you go and slaughter the blood of a lamb when Yahusha has slaughtered his blood? Why would you circumcise your penis when your heart's been circumcised? Why? It's a bit, why would you hammer together nails and we've got to dress it with green leaves and foliage and watch it die over the course of a week so we don't forget Yahusha? Well, if you have to do all that to remember Yahusha, then your life must be really busy or your mind must be woohoo, It's madness, guys. It's like things you do. We did all these things with our young kids years ago, and you know, if you want to do silly little things with your kids to get their attention, that's different. But as adults, it's time to grow up, guys. It's very silliness, very silly. Our time is wasted by building childish, wicked monuments and structures, celebrating the shadow of booths rather than the truth of the real Jerusalem and Yahusha dwelling within us. I've still got young children, and I don't do any of this with them anymore because it's sincerity and in truth, and we talk about things that are real and relevant at the time, you know, instead of going out there and hammering nails together and, you know, throwing grape juice over the side of the door because of the door and the lintel of the house for Passover and all this rubbish they grow. It's just another form of religion, you know, and they get raised up thinking they're a bunch of wackos. You know, it's ridiculous. Many folk are settling. Did I read all that? Yeah, we're celebrating the shadow of booths rather than the truth of the real Jerusalem and Yahusha dwelling within us. You are the dwelling place. Yahusha has put his down payment in you. That's the celebration of tabernacles, of booths. And of course, we're looking to Yahusha coming back in the flesh and also in the new Jerusalem, which will be coming, you know, a big cube coming from the sky, and we'll also be part of it. All lively stones fitted together. How does that work? Many folk are settling for shadows. Are you a folk settling for shadows? Are you one of the folk settling for shadows? The childish things? Many folk are settling for shadows, traditions, rather than understanding truth. Satan is in the center of our feasts. If we let him bring everything to wickedness, deadness, and idolatry. If we let him bring everything to wickedness, deadness, and idolatry, he is in our feast. So, that's why we're called to partake, participate, behave, introduce these feasts into our lifestyle year after year, because Yahusha's training us. They're called redemptive feasts. He's redeeming us through these feasts. Remember when you first came into Yahusha? How childish and naive and, you know, very strict and rigid was your understanding because you'd come out of religion, or maybe you hadn't. But as time goes on, Yahusha guides us and leads us, fills us more and more, and takes us onto greener pastures. This is a greener pasture, guys. This is a completely liberating greener pasture. You don't have to gather together with all these whackheads around that may or may not believe what you believe. Don't gather with them then. If you're in the world by yourself, no partner, no wife, no children, nobody around, and feeling lonely, don't. It's wonderful. Have Yahusha to yourself. If you've got a spouse in Yahusha, celebrate the feast with your spouse. If you don't have a spouse, or if you've got a group of people around you that believe, come together with a group of people. But you don't have to do all this tradition. Let Yahusha guide your feasts, and don't bring the wickedness in. The teachers out there want you to go to them and to have to learn and memorize all this hard, complicated stuff. And it's keeping us down. It's keeping us in bondage. How much we've just had the most wonderful time, these feasts. Come out of all the religious wickedness. It's wickedness, guys. It's wicked. We're allowing Satan to have our feasts. And we thought we were in there worshipping Yahusha. But because it's all traditions, it's all stuff from the ancient texts that aren't relevant to us now because they're shadows. We learn the shadows, but we also know that Yahusha fulfilled the shadows. So isn't it better to worship Yahusha and see what he's going to tell us? He's fresh and real. His blood was shed for you today, yesterday. He has no beginning and end. Guys, these feasts are everlasting and eternal. What's he going to tell us next year? He didn't come back this year, did he? So it's so exciting, guys. Are you grasping this? Instead of doing all these childish things, 𝗪𝗓𝗧𝗖𝗛 and blowing shofars and lighting candles and all this nonsense, holding up bread and cups and, you know, foot washing. Come together in sincerity and truth, like mature grown-up adults, and discuss and have a feast and a celebration. And obviously Yahusha will be the center, and you'll talk about Yahusha, and whatever goes down, it goes down. Someone might be having a heartbreak, someone might be having drama. Otherwise, you might be having a celebration, and you might have wonderful things to share. But you don't have to, you know, like if you were having a dinner party, like inviting people over, you don't naturally, most of us don't plan it. You just come together and see what's going to happen because you're friends. But this whole religious ceremony of coming together and Can't you see it's a hangover of church? It's a hangover of synagogue. So it's distracting from the true meaning. What is the true meaning? Please don't go posting scriptures after scriptures after scriptures underneath my video here of where we are commanded to build sukkahs, where we are commanded to light candles and blow shofars and all this stuff and bread and wine and all the commandments. Don't go post. I understand where you're coming from. I understand. I've read the scriptures. I understand where you're coming from. But this year, during this feast time, Yahusha has liberated his bride. He's taken another big step in liberating us to say, understand me, see me. Can't you see I want you to see me? Instead of sitting all around there doing all this childish stuff, focus on me. I want you to know me. I want you to know me, to know what all those shadows meant. Instead of getting together and focusing on the shadows, I want you to get together, and even if you can't get together, I want you to focus on me, to see me, because I love you. I love you. That's what it's all about. We need to be taught and experience these truths to have understanding of real truth. We need to be taught and experience these truths to have understanding of real truth. You know, true believers no longer worship these booths or even erect them anymore, for they understand it is bringing Satan amongst us, no different than a Christmas tree. No different than a Christmas tree. He said, how dare you compare my sukkah to a Christmas tree, you wicked man, Mark. I said it. Christopher wrote it. Blame him. No, I said it. I agree. How could you declare such a wicked thing? They represent the same thing. They're bringing Satan into our homes because they are not honouring Yahusha in sincerity and in truth. They are an old shadow which have been picked up by religion, transformed and, bastardized. And the message, they don't even talk about the true message. It's like Passover. They sit around and do this whole big Seder thing with bread and wine and, cats and dogs and all sorts of rubbish that they're going with, holding up all sorts of stupid stuff, and they don't even believe in Yahusha. Can you see how this is ridiculous? Every feast is the same. It's a worldly feast, a worldly Jewish feast. And just because we understand Yahusha and understand that we're not Jewish per se, we're understanding nothing if we still do what they do. Oh, but it was written in the scripture first. Yeah, as types and shadows, hoping that with Yahusha's Ruach inside us, we would have the intellect and common sense to go, oh, okay, we don't have to do that because Yahusha did that. Do I have to go through the list again? We don't have to blow shofars because it's not even a shofar. It's the day of the shout. If anything, you should be out there shouting like an idiot, not blowing a shofar. But you don't have to shout like an idiot because we're waiting for the day that Yahusha, the global air siren goes forth, You don't have to foot wash, waving palm branches, holding up a bread and a cup and, This is very childish, guys. If you are putting up a sukkah, blowing your shofar, washing your feet and doing all this nonsense, you are just like bringing in a Christmas tree. It's just like bringing in a Christmas tree. What's the idol? What's the pagan deity I'm celebrating? Yourself. And who's in you if you're doing that? Shaitan is in there, getting you to focus on yourself. Fasting is all about yourself. Putting up booths and sitting under there and, in this primitive structure, What's that about? Focusing on yourself. All the neighbours are going, what's that whackhead over there doing? That's what this article is about. This guy's got his binocular looking at this thing getting built up over the course of a week. It's all religious nonsense shadows, guys. It's scriptural shadows. You don't have to do all this. You're making a mockery. You are making a mockery of a beautiful, amazing time that Yahusha has fulfilled or is about to. You're making a mockery out of it. Doing this wickedness and living in the darkness of the shadows, it's darkness. It wasn't darkness to them back there because he was using it to teach them, to wash their minds, to prepare them for when he would arrive. And even so, they didn't recognise him. And he's washing our minds today with his blood and with his word. But we have to see in the 21st century context of through his sacrifice, and through his fulfillment of most of the feasts, just not the last few. But he has fulfilled those last feasts in the sense that he is living within us. They didn't have that back then. He lives within us. We don't need all these external symbols and external reminders and external this and external that. The weekly Shabbat is not an external reminder. It's the sign of the everlasting covenant that the blood covenant, and we rest and we love it. It's the best day of the week as far as I'm concerned. It's anointed. It's set apart day. So don't worry, we're not going to put a video up about getting rid of that. But I'm talking about all these shadows that we use to teach us about what Yahusha would do. And everybody still wants to look at the shadows instead of Yahusha. It's phenomenal where Yahusha's taking us, guys. Taking us to greener and greener pastures. Doesn't want us weighed down with all these things, like when we were in the church, in the circus. All these things we had to do to worship him. And then we realise, not only do we not have to do all that, we weren't even worshipping him to start with. Well, Satan's in our feasts, guys. You don't have to do all that stuff anymore. This isn't because I'm crying legalism or crying replacement theology, replying this or crying out for that. I'm not declaring any of that nonsense that they do. I'm just saying we're all there holding up our bread and our wine and, you know, blowing our shofars, washing feet, getting together real solemn and serious and reading our scriptures. And Yahusha's just walking right past like he did last time he was here. Yahusha's walking past going, "Oi, come here." And we're like, "No, we can't. We've got to finish this first." He's like, "Okay, who else wants me?" He's always moving on because he's in us. We are the sukkah. We are the booth. Passover and unleavened bread. Passover is just the whole general time that we're addressing here. Within the time of Passover, there is the unleavened bread, day of unleavened bread, which is a high Shabbat. There is the first fruits. There's all the things, like when people say it's Christmas time and there's all different days, Christmas Eve and this day and that day and that day, Boxing Day and all these days. Within the Christmas season, this is the Passover season. So that's what Passover is, the whole time of Passover, right? Unleavened bread is a specific day, or a specific week, I should say. So, my Passover begins at sundown on the 14th day of the first month, and on the next day, the 15th, you must begin celebrating the festival of unleavened bread, which continues for 7 days. And during that time, the bread you eat must be made without yeast. On the first day of the festival, all the people must stop their ordinary work and observe an official day for set-apart assembly. And for 7 days, you must present special gifts to me. On the 7th day, the people must again stop all their ordinary work to observe an official day for set-apart assembly. Fair enough, isn't it? The Passover observance was never about atoning for evil or disobedient behaviour, as they did through the sacrificial system. This is completely separate to the sacrificial system. Remember, this happened before they even got to the sacrificial system. It was a remembrance of thanksgiving for their deliverance from death because of the blood of the Passover lambs. Understand that the Passover lamb was not a purifying sin offering. The lamb for the original Passover wasn't even a sacrifice. The lamb was offered as a substitute, not as a sacrifice. They weren't sacrificing animals in Egypt. They were killing animals to put the blood on their doorposts. It wasn't a sacrificial system. They weren't sacrificing for any wrongdoing. They were just being obedient. If they didn't do it, put the blood on their doorpost, they didn't get delivered. So it wasn't a purifying sin offering. It was a substitution. Likewise, Yahusha was our substitute. This is where many miss the point and make Messiah's death on the stake to be some bizarre human sacrifice. Some bizarre human sacrifice. When his death achieved so much more than that. If he was a human sacrifice, then he would have only been able to atone for unintentional crimes. Because that's what the sacrificial system was for. So if he only fulfilled the sacrificial system, what about all the people who done intentional crimes? He wiped it all out. He fulfilled all of it. He was the sacrificial system, but so much more. So many miss the point and make Messiah's death on the stake to be some bizarre human sacrifice when his death achieved so much more than that. He not only atoned for Yisrael as a substitutionary Passover lamb, but rendered ineffective the sacrificial system, which could only atone for unintentional disobedience anyway. He wasn't a sacrifice. He wasn't sacrificed in the temple like this sacrifice or that sacrifice or this offering or that. No, he wasn't. He was taken outside the camp and executed like the lambs were executed. He wasn't some special offering. He was an execution. He was a substitute, you know. So that was Passover and unleavened bread. Within the week of Passover, we have the first fruit harvest. When you enter the land I am giving you and you harvest its first crops, bring the priest a bundle of grain from the first cutting of your grain harvest. On the day after the Shabbat, the priest will lift it up before me so it may be accepted on your behalf. On that same day, you must sacrifice a 1-year-old male lamb with no defects as an ascending near offering to me. And with it, you must present a love grain offering consisting of 4.4 litres of choice flour moistened with olive oil. It will be a special gift, a pleasing aroma to me. You must also offer 1 litre of wine as a liquid offering. Do not eat any bread or roasted grain or fresh kernels on that day until you bring this offering to me. This is a permanent instruction for you, and it will be observed from generation to generation wherever you live. This feast was to be properly observed after Yisrael entered the promised land of Canaan and they started planting crops and doing the harvest. This was the first fruit harvest. Yahusha was the first fruit. Every one of these festivals are directly related to Yahusha's death, burial, and resurrection. First, he was executed on Passover, just as the blood of the Passover lamb, way before the establishment of the sacrificial system, marked out Yisrael to be spared judgment from death. We too, by trusting in the power of Yahusha's death and the blood he shed for deliverance, are marked out, sealed, as being exempt from judgment. So just as Yisrael put the blood on the doorposts and they were sealed, so the angel of death wouldn't slaughter them, we too are marked, sealed, washed in his blood. We've got his name written on our forehead. So when the reapers come to cause havoc and devastation and annihilation, those reapers will be exempt from judgment. The Feast of Unleavened Bread teaches us that no disobedience as represented by leaven can accompany us into the new life Yahusha has prepared for us. And of course, Yahusha himself says he was the bread of life, and his bread is unleavened. He is the unleavened bread, because leaven represent disobedience, wickedness, evil. So can you see that it's not, he's fulfilled this feast. So why are we still not eating leaven? What does that mean to us? Do you want to just live a surface understanding, like on the milk of the word? Or do you want to go deeper and see that it's nothing to do with whether we eat leaven or not at Passover time? It's our life, it's our behavior. What is the leaven in our behavior that he wants us to purge all day of the year? And we come together at the feasts and we discuss these things and we get together. That's the one thing you can't do every other day of the year. We're told to come together with people that are like-minded believers, washed in his name, immersed believers in the truth. So that's the one thing you come together in sincerity and in truth to do. Not to just not eat leaven, you know. That's a moot point. It's irrelevant. The leaven is our behavior. It's time to wake up and go deeper. But we still have to be obedient. The obedience is in your behavior. This is being obedient. The person who's standing there who did not overcome any of their behaviors but stopped eating leaven once a year, standing next to the person who has been overcoming, trying their hardest, failing, picking themselves up, going further, failing, picking themselves up, going further, trying to overcome, purging all the leaven and wicked behavior of themselves out Which one do you think is going to be more favoured by Yahusha? Which one is going to have a close relationship with Yahusha? The one who followed a religious shadow liturgy? You know you can follow Yahusha's Torah and still be caught up in a liturgy. Because none of these instructions are for us. They are here to show us and teach us. But are they for us to mimic? This is why you've got to read and ask Yahusha to guide you and tell you the context through the words of life. So it's all about the leaven. So because Yahusha's body and life was unleavened, he was the first to be bodily resurrected. And we can say why? Because Yahusha's body and life was unleavened, it was perfect. He was the first to bodily resurrected. He was the first to be bodily resurrected, and we can see from the observance of first fruits that it is not until after the first fruits of the harvest that the people may partake of the harvest. It's not until after the first fruits of the harvest that the people may partake of the harvest. Yahusha was resurrected first, and then later we will be resurrected from our graves. Yahusha was resurrected first, and then later we will be resurrected from our graves if we are unleavened. If we are unleavened. If we don't eat leaven once a year. Some people don't eat bread at all. Bread's not that good for you. Grain, normal grain. So what's that got to do with anything spiritual or relationship with Yahusha? Not eating bread, not eating leaven. Nothing at all. Bread is a symbolic. You've got to go, look what the shadow is. The shadow takes you to the foot of Yahusha. You come to the feet of Yahusha and you communicate with him and say, what do I do? How do I please you in this? This is hard stuff to grasp, guys, if you want to be religious. I don't want to be religious anymore. I want the truth. If Yahusha said, yeah, you should still keep eating leaven, been doing it for the last 15 years, it's not a big deal. Wasn't changing my behaviour though. Now he's coming in on my behaviour. It doesn't like this, he doesn't like that. He's flogging and rebuking and chastising, and you know. That's why I'm telling you this, so you can understand why your life is so miserable. Because you're looking at dead shadows and rituals and liturgy instead of going to Yahusha and changing your behaviour. Drawing from those 9 fruits, your warfare and fighting. So, Yahusha was resurrected first, and then later we will be resurrected from our graves if we are unleavened, or we'll be transformed in the twinkling of an eye, just as he was. Now that Yahusha's broken body and blood have been presented in the higher dimension as the first fruits of the resurrection, as the slain lamb, we too, as Yisrael, can partake of this resurrection too at his return, if we have prepared ourselves so that no leaven or disobedience is in us. Did you know that that's what Yahusha was doing after he rose? Remember, he rose from the dead, and was it Miriam ran into him? And she recognized him and he said, no, don't touch me. You can't touch me. I haven't presented myself yet. Well, let's snap forward from there, jump forward to Revelation, where there's all this big song and dance, and the esteem and might and power to the Lamb who's freshly slain. Yahusha appears as a lamb freshly slain, just like a lamb freshly slain. This is what he was doing before he appeared to his emissaries in the room, when he said, put your fingers in there and touch me, I'm real. He couldn't be touched yet because he hadn't cleansed the higher dimension yet. There's 2 dimensions, and there's uncleanliness in both. We saw that the unclean spirits got kicked out of the camp, just like when we're unclean, we get kicked out of the camp, you know, metaphorically. So that's what Yahusha was doing as soon as he was resurrected. He took his blood and presented himself to not only cleanse this dimension, but the higher dimension as well. He really kicked Satan's ass, didn't he? And an official day for set-apart assembly will be proclaimed that same day, on which you will do no ordinary work. This is a permanent instruction for you, and it will be observed. It must be observed from generation to generation wherever you live. The day must be observed. A set-apart day, meaning you don't work. The day must be observed from generation to generation. Do we still have to offer the lambs? The drink offering, intimate peace offering, the love grain offering. Do we still have to slaughter lambs and present them here? Well, many would have us do everything else, not eat leaven, raise up a bread in a cup, because Yahusha did that. I did that video about the Red Bull and the KFC. He only lifted up bread, it's because they were eating bread at the time. He lifted up wine because he's saying, this is my bread, just like that bread there. I'm going to be beaten. This wine is going to be, my blood's going to be shed for you. Today, if we were sitting around drinking Red Bull and KFC, don't recommend it, it's not healthy, but if we were, and Messiah stood up and said, did you see like Red Bull? That's just like my blood. It was symbols. And yet we're all standing there weeping and wailing, picking up bread and cups and symbols and not eating leaven for a week. And, we've been told to do all this, but we don't have to slaughter lambs, do we? So, see how ridiculous it is? When you don't listen to Yahusha's voice, interpret through the Ruach. The Ruach interprets the scriptures. Yahusha interprets his own words. Just remember, all these feasts are to train us in his love, train us to fight the battle. Not just the battle of evil that wants to come through us, not just the battle of self. The self that wants to get in the way all the time, the self that wants to stand in the doorway and get attention, to pose. Look at this door that I'm teaching you about. I hope I'm not doing that for you here. I'm wanting to get the door open, keep it open for you and then bugger off. I don't want to get in the door for you. The door is there. Run to Yahusha, in through the portal. If you haven't been immersed in his name, Yahusha, that's the first step. His blood and ritually cleansed in the water. You're circumcised. Your heart is circumcised. And his spirit comes within you, his Ruach, to teach you, train you, flog you, rebuke you, to bring forth these fruits. This is the spiritual warfare, not binding and loosing and fighting and arguing and preaching and teaching. The warfare, the battle, is behaving these 9 fruits. So in every situation you find yourself in, draw from these 9 fruits. And that's how you do it. Don't get involved. Don't just let everybody have their insanity. Don't take them, what they're doing to you personally. Because they hate you. They hated Yahusha, they're going to hate you. Don't take the hatred personally. Rejoice that you are being persecuted for his name. So that's how you get yourself out of the way, by letting people have it, and not taking them personally, their behaviour. But then what behaviour are you supposed to have? You go into your portal, into the secret place. Connect with your bridegroom and call for a fruit. What fruit do I need in this circumstance, Father? And he'll give you one. Love them. Be gentle with them. Just be kind to this one. They're nuts. Just be kind to them. Sometimes it might be self-control. Control yourself. Control yourself. Settle down. Go back down. Don't rise up. Go back down. Even if you have to cry, don't let anything cruel come out of your mouth. Harsh. Unkind. Can you go there? This is where the bride's going, brothers and sisters. I'm so happy and proud to tell you, this is where Yahusha's bride is going. Because this is what he was like. He was completely unleavened. He was perfect. He had all these 9 fruits. Imagine walking around with him. Never made any mistakes. He was always right and was perfect. Well, that's the road we're on. So let's go, guys. Run.